Have you ever witnessed or participated in an incident that made you doubt the reality of what was happening? Sometimes this phenomenon appears as a global cataclysm, and other times it is just a barely noticeable event. But after it, new truths open up before a person which argue with reality. Is there really another hidden world? Is it possible that the soul wins in the eternal dispute between mind and spirit? If you have been thinking about such questions, it will be interesting for you to get to know our heroine today. Marina Weiler was born in the Brazilian city of Limeira. After graduating from the Faculty of Neurology at the University of Campinas, she received her doctorate in neuroscience. In 2016, she moved to America to work at the National Institute on Aging. Today, Dr. Weiler is an associate professor of psychiatry at the University of Virginia. Her research focuses on unusual human experiences gained in out-of-body and near-death experiences. Marina says that since childhood she had prophetic dreams, could communicate with dead people, and receive messages from another world. Neither she nor her family could explain how it worked or why it was happening. Later, during her studies at school, the girl was forced to come to terms with the fact that the world around her has only a physical, material side. Studying biology and physics forced me to abandon the impressions of childhood. It was only during her graduate studies that Marina had the opportunity to read Edward Kelly's book, The Irreducible Mind: Psychology of the 21st Century. This forced her to take a new look at her childhood experiences from a scientific point of view, and she realized that she wanted to explore this area of life. What usually happens when someone has an out-of-body experience? A person feels that he is no longer in his physical body. This usually happens when people are sleeping or napping. Suddenly, they feel that they have left their physical shell and soared to the ceiling. Now they can walk through walls and be transported anywhere in the world at will. It's a very vivid and real experience. Some of these experiences can be very short and take several seconds. As a rule, people who are frightened by unusual sensations return to their bodies and wake up. If the person is clearly enjoying what is happening, then such an experience can last longer. In this case, you can travel to other realms and dimensions, see extraterrestrial beings or deceased loved ones, receive messages from the universe or from the afterlife. Different people's impressions of their experiences are very different from each other. In this video, I want to talk about cases of out-of-body travel, which were shared with Marina Weiler by volunteers participating in the research. That's what Rhonda, a resident of Nashville, said. She was 37 years old when she had a similar experience. She fell asleep on a chaise longue at sunset. Suddenly, she had a feeling as if an electric current was running through her hands. She suddenly imagined herself in the sunlight, but at the same time she was aware that she was on her own balcony. Rhonda felt a sense of peace and wonderful peace. She heard the gentle sounds of music. Immediately after that, the woman left the body completely and stopped feeling it. She found herself on an unfamiliar street where other people were strolling. The atmosphere of this place was filled with love. Rhonda really liked it there and wanted to stay forever. Just the thought of her little daughter made the woman return to her body. And this experience is more likely to shock you than make you envy the person who had to go through it. A 45-year-old man dozed off from fatigue in an armchair. At that moment, his soul separated from his body, rose into the air, and left the building. The familiar surroundings of the city spread out before him. In flight, he crossed the plain and flew over the river. On the other bank, he noticed something that looked like a human corpse in the bushes. Suddenly, he felt himself already in his own body and immediately called the rescue service. Fortunately, his message was taken seriously. A rescue team arrived and found a lifeless body, according to his description. Unbelievable. Near-death experiences occur during life-threatening events. They include the feeling that the soul is leaving the body, an altered perception of time and space, and visions. Dr. Weiler believes that the near-death experience has not yet been investigated. But even now, it can be argued that this phenomenon proves the reality of continuing life after death. Some people who have experienced similar experiences said that they felt a sense of complete peace, were in a dark tunnel leading to the light, heard angelic singing, felt the presence of another person or being. Let's look at some examples of near-death experiences. The 19-year-old remembers that he and his friend were driving in his car. When approaching an unregulated intersection, the driver looked around and continued driving. At that moment, a car jumped out of nowhere at high speed. There was a terrible sound of impact and grinding, and immediately the young man felt that he was flying through a dark, enclosed space. Then he hovered at a height of about 1.5 meters above the street. He saw people running and crowding around the car, and how his friend was pulled out of the passenger seat, who was injured but alive. He was looking at his own body surrounded by people, and how they were trying to get him out of the car. His legs were twisted and pinned under the steering wheel, and there was blood everywhere. Finally, a siren sounded, and rescuers arrived. The medic examined the victim right in the car and gave him an injection. At the same moment, the wounded man felt pain and realized that he had returned to his body. When near-death memories mention the presence of other people, they most often come to inform the dying person that his time to cross the line has not yet come. That's what one young woman told me. I had this experience during a difficult birth when I lost a lot of blood. However, I watched everything very carefully from above and felt quite alive. And then it turned out that I wasn't the only one floating under the ceiling of the delivery room. It was quite crowded here. These were people I knew, but they were no longer alive. They all looked very friendly, and I immediately felt very good from their presence. I felt that they had come to help me. I had the feeling that I had come to a party that they were holding in my honor. I've never felt so much care and love from others in my entire life as I do in these moments. Suddenly, my grandmother was there. She smiled, shook her head, and pointed down. I saw my body and woke up. But sometimes unfamiliar entities appear in the visions. That's what a man remembers who miraculously survived a ruptured appendix. He was at home when he felt very weak and fell unconscious, and his mental essence floated out of his body, flew around the room, and found itself on the street. Beautiful soft music rang out, and a cloud of pink mist appeared. A ray of light shot out from it, and the man swam towards it. It was an unearthly light in which there was absolute understanding and unconditional love. The following was conveyed in my mind. It's too early for you. You have to go back and finish what you were born to do. Bring the light of love. The ambulance managed to arrive on time, and the operation was successful. This man who has returned to life has forever remembered the advice he received in another reality and the feeling of love and compassion that we so miss in this world. Often, pictures from his past life unfold in front of the dying. That's what a man experienced during a short-term critical temperature rise. Everything happened completely unexpectedly. I had been feeling unwell for about 2 weeks due to a cold. The temperature was at around 38 degrees, but that night I felt much worse, and as soon as I got out of bed, I just passed out. After that, I discovered that I was in a black void, and pictures of my life began to flash before me. They started when I was 6 years old, and I remembered my friend from kindergarten. In front of me, there were successive pictures of how I studied in elementary school, then in high school, then in college and medical school. Then the episodes of my work were shown. I knew I was dying, and I remember thinking at that moment that I had failed to provide for my family. This instant viewing of life took place in the form of speculative pictures, but I must say that they were much more vivid than the shots on the cinema screen. I've only seen the most significant moments. I was surrounded by darkness, except for the pictures that flashed before me. At the same time, I clearly felt the presence of a powerful, loving being who was by my side throughout the session. When I came to my senses, I could easily tell you in detail about every period of my life. In many stories, there is a boundary between life and death. Sometimes it's conditional, and sometimes it's completely obvious. This is what a woman who died of cardiac arrest tells us. She found herself in the middle of a huge field covered with soft grass. Bright sunlight poured down on this peaceful landscape from above. In the distance, the woman saw a wicker fence that stretched across the entire field. She went towards her and saw a man moving towards her from the other side, as if to meet her. There was a feeling that the woman could not move a single step, and then she was irresistibly pulled back. Then the man who was walking towards her bowed, turned around and began to walk away into the distance. And the woman came to her senses in the intensive care unit after using a defibrillator. Many survivors of clinical death claim that they did not want to return to life, but sometimes thoughts of abandoned loved ones made them decide to stay on Earth. And there are also such testimonies in which the deceased was literally pushed into his dead body. Here is an amazing story by two women as an example. I thought about my children and my husband. When I relived that amazing journey in my mind, I realized that I really didn't want to come back. But I thought about my responsibilities towards my family and decided to return. I was returned, but I do not know why. I just wasn't allowed to leave my life. I guess I'm still ready to die, but I am very sorry that I was left here because I was happy in that world. Marina is grateful to the respondents who shared their experiences with her. After all, people are still faced with the skeptical attitude of others towards such stories. According to the researcher, an elderly woman expressed this idea best of all. What happened to me was very interesting and unforgettable, but this is not the case that I wanted to tell anyone about. People would just think I was crazy in my old age. But all those who have returned to life say that their experiences have forced them to take a fresh look at their own lives. Before his death, there was no desire to consciously consider his lifestyle. But then everything changed. Now all actions are thought out in advance. Meaning and benefit are sought in them, not only for the person himself, but also for the world as a whole. It seems to many that they have become much better at understanding people, and now they are grateful to the near-death experience for the wisdom they have gained. But perhaps the most important thing that gives a near-death experience is a new attitude towards death. Marina Weiler fully agrees with the conclusions that the man made for himself after returning from the afterlife. When I was a little boy, I was afraid of death. I woke up at night from nightmares, and during the day I threw tantrums at the mere mention of something related to dying. I said that I didn't want to die and asked my parents to save me from death. My wise mother comforted me, saying, "There's nothing to worry about. Life is a path that we follow, and at the end of it, we will all meet with death. Everyone should cross the last line with dignity." I remembered her words, but I didn't feel them in my heart. But after the near-death experience, I'm no longer afraid of death. The fear was gone. I don't feel terrible at funerals anymore. In a way, I'm even happy for the dead, because I know where they're going. I finally understood what my mother wanted to say, but she couldn't show it. And now I've seen it all with my own eyes, and I don't feel the slightest fear. What do you think about the afterlife? Where do you think we will end up after physical death? Do you believe in life after death? Write your opinion in the comments. If you want to learn more about life after death, then I recommend watching my other videos. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it. See you soon.